Welcome to Story in a Bottle. I'm your host, Dan McElroy. Each episode, our guests are leading voices in tech, media, and entertainment. And to get to know them better, we share their favorite cocktails as they share their stories.
For most people, wine can be intimidating, overwhelming, and often pretentious. Tyler Balliet's mission is to change that. Over a sweet berry wine by Los Forest and a Civil Blanc, both from Wisconsin, Tyler shares his own history with wine, from his first attempt at trying to demystify wine with a print magazine, to a more approachable wine store, to wine events like Wine Riot and Rosé Mansion, to his book, The Rebel School of Wine. As he continues his career, he continues to keep his hands in all forms of media to help everyone experience wine, however they want to enjoy it most.
Do you want to do the honors of pouring this wine?
Sure.
Okay. Tell me about the wine while you're pouring it.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's some stuff in the
A little cork in there?
cork. This is the Sweet Berry Wine by Las Harris Winery. My friend Joel makes this wine.
Where is Las Harris Winery?
It's based in Sonoma, but they source grapes from all over. So it's like one of those more like, I don't want to call it like a virtual winery, but like they don't own any facilities. And it's like by design, like
Right.
it gives them like a lot of flexibility. They can scale up, they can move things around, and it's a really super small winery.
Okay.
Like Joel's the only full-time employee.
Nice. And what kind of wine is this? Is it sweet berries?
Yeah, I don't know. So Sweet Berry Wine is like, so his business partner is Eric Wareheim from like Tim and Eric. And this is based on the sketch where like, it's like the Sweet Berry Wine sketch with Dr. Dave Brule.
Mm-hmm.
And he like goes wine tasting in Sonoma and like gets covered in wine and gets all hammered.
Right.
And so that's who's on the label. But, you know, a lot of like kind of like celebrity wines are just like not very good. And
Right.
but Las Harris wines are like ridiculously good.
This is nice. It's not too heavy.
Yeah.
So not also I was expecting like sweet and it's not sweet.
Yeah, it's not sweet. They sell almost all their wine through like the wine club.
Mm-hmm.
And online. But it's really, really good with pizza. And
Yeah.
apparently it ages pretty well. Like this is like a 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're currently on the 2021s, but like my friend Joel forgot about a bunch of them and then tried them like 4 or 5 years later. He's like, these are really outstanding
Amazing.
because it's kind of like their flagship. And so, yeah, I don't know. I like drinking wines that are like, well, I mostly like drinking wines that my friends make.
Well, if you have that kind of situation, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
I mean, you are someone who has spent a lot of time drinking wine and lived in Northern California. Like you know your winemakers is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And, you know, like I've worked in wine for almost 20 years now. And so, you know, there's really like kind of like two sides of the wine industry. There's like the restaurant side and then there's like the producer side. And I've always fallen a lot more on like the producer side. And so I've gotten to become friends with like a lot of like people that own wineries and make wine just because like I've worked with them and I've done all kinds of different, you know, projects with them.
But let's talk about what you're working on now, because you have an amazing, exciting book coming out in May.
Yes.
And called The Rebel School of Wine. Is that right?
Rebel School of Wine.
And why is it called The Rebel School? And what is it? What for people who are gonna definitely buy your book, who listen to the show?
Right.
What is it that they're getting when they put their money down and say, I want this?
Yeah. So I spent the last 3 years of my life full-time, nonstop writing. It's a comprehensive guide to wine, right? So I cover every single major wine region. I cover every grape. I cover how wine is made. I cover where to buy it, how to buy it, economics, how to drink, how to age it, everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's super, super illustrated. So there's 450 illustrations. But where the rebel part comes in is instead of like every other wine book is like, you can taste the strawberries and the boysenberries. And for me, like what things smell like or taste like the flavors and aromas is like the least interesting part.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I care and I like, you know, I write a lot about like, oh, this wine is sweet or this wine is dry or this is bold or this is light. But what I think is more interesting and what helps people understand wine better is context. And so I wanted to answer the question of like, why and like, how did we get here? You know? So I go through
what do you mean by how did we get here?
Well,
how do we get to the drinking a Zinfandel in Sonoma or what? Like what?
Yeah, like wine's 9,000 years old. It predates human, you know, like basically like it started, like people drank wine before human civilization started, when people are still nomadic, right?
Yeah.
And so how do we go from like 9,000 years ago, like climbing trees and falling out of trees to get grapes,
Right.
to going to, Trader Joe's and like, buying a bottle of like, Zinfandel or whatever.
$2 Chuck.
Yeah. And I wanted to figure out like why and how, because for me, like understanding wine really kind of like makes the experience better, Like I like drinking wines that my friends make because it makes me feel good when I drink it. And so if you can drink something that you feel confident about, like from a science perspective, actually, it makes it taste better. And we can get into that. But so yeah, Rebel School wine. The rebel part is really that I think we're talking about wine all wrong. I don't think consumers need to actually learn anything to enjoy it. I think that there's a different way to approach this. And I'm presenting that in, 304 pages.
Well, I mean, and we've talked about this before, the idea of people's knowledge of wine or what they need to know or how intimidating they feel wine can be. And, my point of view on wine is drink what you like. I don't care if it costs $10, it costs $100, $100,000. I think there are diminishing returns sometimes in that cost, but but most people, I think, really are intimidated by it. And you either get them that person then just buying something that has an animal on a label because it feels fun, or trying to really dive deep into the stuff you're talking about. Not that you're talking about in Rebel, but like about, oh, I taste the boysenberries, I taste the strawberries. Like, why do you think we go about it wrong?
I have like I'll give you the short answer.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Part of it is that. So I might reference the wine industry a lot, and the wine industry isn't like the electronics industry or like the food industry where like there's, like 5 companies that dominate 80% of the marketplace.
Yeah.
With wine, there's a gajillion companies and nobody even has like a 1% market share. And so there is no one voice. There is no one determination. And so the wine industry just kind of fell into these ways of talking to consumers. And they never really had to talk to consumers until the last 20 years.
Right.
And they just adopted jargon, So like, it would be like if a software engineer who created the software for your iPhone was trying to explain to you why you should buy an iPhone.
Like using all like the technological terms and
it's like, well, this chip and this and this and this. You'd be like, what? Whereas like, like when Steve Jobs came along, he was just like, it has apps and you can call your friends, and you're just like, shut up, take my money.
and mostly you're just going to use the apps and not call anyone.
Yeah. And so there's this movement to be like, well, we have to educate consumers. And like, I can't think of a single product or industry that has ever succeeded when they had to educate their consumers like that, And on the flip side, or they try to like dumb it down.
Right.
And that's terrible. Like you're dealing with really smart, educated people. So what I wanted to do was like give people a little bit of information, make it entertaining, make it fun, and give them context, right? The wine industry likes to talk about like wine as if it lives in a vacuum. They use words that you've never heard before, like varietal.
Mm-hmm.
They use like, I don't know. It's just like, it doesn't make any sense to me. And for me, like wine is like about people, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to tell the stories of people. So like I tell the story in Argentina, how a financial crisis in 2001 led to the rise of Malbec becoming a superstar.
Right.
It was all about a financial crisis.
I didn't know that. Why? Because Malbec has always been the grape of Argentina, but
hasn't always, not until 2001.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. When their economy collapsed, the peso dropped dramatically because it was pegged to the US dollar before that. When it dropped so much, it allowed the wineries to actually export at a reasonable price.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what they did, the winemakers went to the US, took all of the Robert Parker 95 plus point wines that were rated really well, gave them to the winemakers and said, make this.
Mm-hmm.
And they made similar wines with similar flavor profiles. Malbec was the obvious choice. And they marketed it over here, which sounds really not sexy because people are like, well, but the winemakers in France, they're artists. No, the winemakers in France do this exact same thing. They just tell you they're artists.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it's
That's
science.
marketing.
It's science. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about because of the way you write about wine? I mean, Robert Parker kind of, I would say, was probably the person who started a lot of the way that people talk about wine in the U.S. at least.
Yeah.
For better or worse. But he started the point system with his newsletter.
Yes.
What do you think about that like approach, and what would you like if someone was coming to you new to wine and wanted to be a part of that, or thought that that's what they need to do? How would you coach them?
Yeah, I mean, I still read Robert Parker. He's not involved anymore. He sold it a while ago, but I'm also like friends with two of the reviewers.
Yeah, sure.
That is like, if we're on like a nerd level 0 through 10 scale, that's like an 8.
Right.
You know,
And for people who don't know, who is Robert Parker?
Robert Parker was a wine critic. He got his start, I think, in the early 70s. He was an attorney from Maryland, and he became the #1 wine critic in the world. I think at some point he was the #1 critic in the world. Like whatever he said, more money changed hands afterwards than anybody else.
Oh my God.
And he created this like scale system. There was a 50 to 100 points, and he wanted to make it really approachable. And he came from this world of Ralph Nader and Consumer Reports and like real journalism. Robert Parker's entire career, right? He built this empire. He never once let a single winery pay for a flight, a meal, anything. A winery takes him to dinner, he splits the check.
Good.
So
Yeah.
like his reviews are unbiased, but they're also what he likes. Like,
Well, that's the thing. That's what it comes down to, what we were talking about before. Like, Robert Parker might have a great palate if we think of it that way, but it's also, when it comes down to it, like I might like a wine he hates, and vice versa.
and he wouldn't argue with you.
Right.
He's like, I'm not telling you how to interpret my opinion, but this is my opinion, and it's not my fault that everybody listens to it. And he tried to stay as impartial as humanly possible. And he's
Sure.
a lawyer, and he did a great job at it.
Yeah.
But I think it came down to the fact that there's so little information.
Well, especially that in the 70s, like wine, even the Judgment of Paris hadn't happened yet. If it was early.
Well, also like a lot has changed in the wine industry, right? Like, a winery a day has opened in California between 1990 and now. Yeah.
That's crazy. People
Yeah.
really like losing money, don't they?
They do. There's now 6,500 wineries in California.
Oh my God.
And so in 1990, there were like, I forget, it's like 800 or something. It was like, so you're seeing this massive growth, and you're like, the US is the #1 wine drinking country in the world by volume, like hands down. And so you're seeing all this growth, and you're just seeing like an industry that didn't really ever know how to connect to the consumer. And then you saw consumers change, like they're still using the same marketing tactics they did before like social media existed,
Mm-hmm.
That was like 100 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's because they don't know how to change how they talk about themselves. Like,
Yeah.
they use the language that they've used forever, and
Look, it's hard. It's like, it's not their fault. They're making
Right.
wine.
right. But I feel like wine can be fun, and not just because of the way you wrote your book.
Yeah.
But just in general, like I used to do a wine. I'd say, I don't even want to call it a club. We were trying to gather data on wine, and so we would do blind tastings like once a month,
Yeah.
and we all had notebooks, and it was usually the same, 5 to 7 people, and everyone had to bring a bottle. Or I think it was everyone brought a bottle, something like that. Anyways, blind tasting, and we write our notes, and at the end of the day, we talk about the wine. It was super fun.
Yeah.
But
Here, have some more.
and at the end of the day, you'd have to like rate the wines and see which ones you thought were great. What I thought was really fun about it, the one that inevitably, when this happened, there would be one that was like a $2 chuck,
Yeah.
and it would often get the top rating
Yeah.
because of, I think, how, going back to science, how they use sugars in it to get it to stimulate you.
No.
You don't think that?
No. This is my theory, but let me tell you the science, right?
Yeah.
So basically, I wrote this book. I was running, a company, got wiped out in the pandemic. I wrote an outline for this book 14 years ago. And my business partner, Morgan, I was like, I don't have time to write this. I don't have time to write this. So for 14 years, or 12 years, I said, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time. Pandemic came, we lost our company, and Morgan was like, guess what you're doing? And so she like got me a book agent got me a publishing deal with HarperCollins. And I was like, I guess I have to write this book now. Can I swear on this thing?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
great.
encouraged.
Yeah. So like every time I talk about writing the book, I swear a lot because it was a miserable, terrible, horrible process.
I know the feeling. I know how hard. I mean, I hated every fucking second of it.
And so
Not my writing, not your writing.
yeah. So when I started writing the book, I was like, it's fine. I'm just going to write down all the stories I've been telling for all these years, which is like, I thought were better than the stories of the average wine person. And I started writing them down and they didn't really add up. And I started like fact checking them.
Mhm.
And I was like, crap.
Oh no.
Like none of these stories are really all that accurate. Some of them are really wrong. And there's a lot of just like misinformation. And so I called my editor. I was like, yo, the pandemic's just going to not stop. Like I got all this time. What if I took an extra year and I, found the real stories? Because the real stories are better.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, yeah, sure. So I got an Adderall prescription. I moved to a small town in California and I just started reading books.
Classic story.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out like I have extreme ADHD and I was like, wait, this is like, I can read books now. This is like amazing.
Yeah.
Like, is this what everybody else gets to live life?
What's this when you say the stories are wrong or the actual stories are more interesting? What's an example of that?
Okay. So let's say like you were like saying that with a $2 chuck, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, it must be the sugars. So I was only given like 304 pages, which meant that I had to really, really, really condense things.
Yeah.
So sometimes I would spend 2 or 3 weeks researching just so I could write like 1 page. That's why it took so long. And so this one actually took me a while. I had to read this book like 4 or 5 times, but I want to study neuroscience and I want to find out how your brain perceives flavor and aroma.
Right.
And I found this book by this like neuroscientist that happens to love wine. He's in his 80s. And basically like smell is the only sense that takes an alternate route to your brain.
Right.
And it first goes through your, the memory part of your brain. And then like the hippocampus, I believe. And then it goes to also the thalamus, which is your emotional part of your brain before it becomes conscious thought. And so the idea, they think why this happens, because if you smell smoke in the middle of the night while you're sleeping, you don't wonder if it's smoke. You wake up and you just feel fear and that keeps you alive, right?
Sure.
But it also means that before anything becomes conscious thought, it's how do you feel?
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about this? And your brain's asking, right, what's going on? So familiarity, like things that are familiar, taste better. Because your brain invents the idea of taste. Taste is something made up. There's no defined anything.
Right.
And so we know very little about any of this, but we do know that it goes through your emotions. So if you're in a bad mood, you actually won't taste the wine. If you're stressed out, you won't be able to taste it because your brain shuts that part off because smell makes you hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And your body's like, yo, we don't got time for this.
That's interesting.
So like, I thought that was really interesting. And I thought that actually, the way that your brain functions, like, is really applicable to a lot of the places you are. Cause like, when you're sitting down and like, I smell one thing and I taste one thing and you can smell and taste something different.
Sure.
And that's why.
So going back to $2 chuck, what is it about the smell of $2 chuck? Because familiar is an interesting word, but I don't know that I had ever had $2 chuck before. I don't remember.
Yeah, did you rate it high?
I don't remember.
So,
but other people did. I mean, it definitely became the unanimously. Maybe I did because I think it was unanimously highest rated without anyone knowing what it was.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that could be going on, but like cheap wine is more familiar to a lot of people than expensive wine.
Yeah.
Like there's not that many people that like have a lot of experience with expensive high-end wine. And I'm not even talking about super expensive.
No, I know what you mean. Then the reason I said sugar, and again, you proved me wrong, I'm happy to be wrong, is that from what I understand about cheaper wine, it tends to have a higher sugar, what do you call it? Percentage, I guess.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
Sugar is generally added to wine, or not added. Super cheap wine, they add sugar.
Yes. $2 chuck, super cheap.
Although it's like really legally challenging to do so. But what they'll do is they'll add like really, really fruity wine.
Yeah.
But like, wine has a lot of sugar in it.
It does.
A fair amount of sugar. Because that's the idea, is like you take yeast, it eats the grape sugars and it produces alcohol, and it will eat most of it, but not all of it. Right?
Yeah.
So another interesting thing about your brain, is that, okay, so like the opposite of sweet is bitter.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has a certain sensitivity to bitter flavors. and it's actually built into your DNA. It's genetic, and it's something you can't change.
Yeah.
And so people that are very sensitive to bitter flavors, if they taste like a dry red wine, it's unpalatable. Like they cannot get it down.
Like Devin's like that. Like she likes Pinot Noirs and hates a Napa Cab. Like, has no interest in it at all. Yeah.
Because genetics.
Right.
And you can't change that. There's this myth in the wine industry that's like, oh, you start out drinking sweet wine and then you'll just eventually like dry wine. It's like, no, like that's not how any of this works. That's not how any of this works.
Do you think that your palate changes at all? And I mean this because I think about wine I drank in college. Versus wine I drink now. If I went to drink that wine I drank in college, I don't think I would like it.
Yeah.
Because I think my taste buds have changed.
Yeah. So your taste buds change throughout your life, especially women. Like after they get pregnant, they can shift dramatically.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So yeah, you change, your taste buds change. You also get accustomed to like nicer things or like not nice things.
Sure.
And like, look, once you like figure out what really good wine tastes like, it's like, it's like really hard to go back. It's like really hard to go back.
But I still think that there's something to be, but you still have that bitterness issue with liking a Cab versus a Pinot Noir.
But there's really, really expensive sweet wine and there's really, really expensive, like, and I don't just mean expensive as in like it costs a lot. I mean like it's really, really well made.
Oh yeah.
You know?
I totally agree with that. And I think, look, and I think it's okay to not like a big expensive Napa Cab.
Look, hey, if you like cheap wine,
I mean,
your life is better than mine.
That's right. Exactly. I envy those people.
Like I wrote even in my book that like, you know, like right around like $130 is when it flatlines. I rarely spend more than like 50 or $60.
Yeah. No,
I'm usually in like the 30 to like
30 to 60,
range.
like you're great. And even 25, there's some great bottles of wine for $25.
You start going to places like Portugal or Spain or Eastern Europe, and white wine, all different game. Like we'll go lower.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, the joke, right, is like everybody asks me, the number one question I get asked for 20 years is like, what's your favorite wine? And my answer is always free wine. Free wine tastes better than any other kind of wine.
That is 100% true. 100% true. Well, let's talk about that idea of like even getting to a place where you know that you like a $30 or $40 bottle of wine. So if you go back to like when you were a kid, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Wisconsin.
And we have a bottle of Wisconsin wine here, so I'm curious if we're going to try it at some point.
I've had for a while.
This is 2020, is that what it is?
19. I bought it in 2020.
Oh my goodness.
And then it spent 3 months driving across the country with me in my car.
I think we're going to have to try it at some point. So you're from Wisconsin, known for its wines, obviously. And cheeses, also. So
lots of cheese.
What, growing up in Wisconsin, like when do you come to this point where you're like, this is something I'm really interested in?
Yeah, I didn't. Not in Wisconsin.
It was not?
No,
okay.
No, I grew up in a beer drinking, like...
Oh, yeah, Wisconsin.
Yeah. We were a Miller High Life family, right?
Champagne and beers.
Yeah. I have a photo of me literally in a diaper. I'm like 9 months old, holding the can High Life, right? Like...
Cool.
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Like, it's not weird there. Like everybody like in other states, people are like, oh, you drink around your kids. So I grew up and everybody was like drinking.
Yeah. I'm from Boston.
Same. Yeah. So, I think I maybe had one glass of wine before I went to college. And then I went to college in Olympia, Washington. And,
an actual wine state, by the way.
Well, it was up and coming then, like dating myself here, but I went to college in 1999. Yeah. And that's when Washington wine was like just starting to kind of get like a little bit respected, but yeah, I started drinking wine.
What prompted it? Do you know? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was a roommate and I, and we both stayed over the summer to work jobs, and we were both working for like the campus. And so we had nothing to do at night. And so we were like, what if we got into wine? And so
Good question.
So like 3 times a week, we would go to like the grocery store and we would split a bottle of wine and then we would drink it together. And it wasn't like we were getting hammered or anything. We were like, let's just try to figure, and then we'd try a different bottle from a different place. And then after college, I moved to France for a year, and it's pretty hard to avoid wine in France, right?
I would say almost impossible. Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about wine when I moved
So you weren't like, when you were drinking it with your roommate, you guys weren't like Googling.
Well, there was no Google, but we weren't looking anything
up. It was around in like
we
2000.
didn't attempt to even get a book or learn anything.
Right. You weren't attempting to learn.
Zero outside sources. we were like, oh, I like this one, but we were drinking wine.
Right. So you moved to France. Did you move to France to learn about wine or just?
Oh, no. I was dating a girl and she got an English teaching position. Why not move to France?
Why not?
I was like 24 years old, 23 years old. Yeah. And so I didn't know anything about wine, but I drank a lot. But that's where I learned like a really important lesson, right? French do not know more about wine than we do in America. They're just more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And they're more confident. The French know wine like we know baseball, right? Like I don't really watch the sports ball, right?
Yeah.
Like, but I can go to a Yankees game and I know what a home run is.
Yeah.
I can't name a single player in MLB, but I know it's called MLB.
Yeah.
I know those bases. I know you run around them. I know there's 9 innings.
Getting it pretty close.
Right?
Yeah.
So, that's how the French know wine. Like basics.
Yeah.
And they're comfortable. They're like, oh, we get this for fish. We get this for,
And it's just part of your upbringing.
It's not.
Or it's just a part of the culture or whatever.
Yeah, it's part of and you kind of pick it up because like nobody's an asshole.
Right.
They're all like really nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And nobody's like, oh, I can't believe you don't know them.
That's cool. So when you come back, how long were you out in France for?
About a year.
A year. So when you come back, like, what do you want to do at this time? You're like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you?
Yeah, I moved back to the U.S. by myself on my 25th birthday.
Okay.
And I had absolutely no idea what I want to do. I went to like a hippie liberal arts college where there's no grades and no majors. Evergreen State College, shout out. It was a great school. I learned a lot actually. And I don't know. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so,
were you working or were you just like sitting there?
I mean, not the day I got back.
Well, right. But
but I had $0, so I had to start working immediately. And there was a wine store like across the street from my apartment in Boston. And so like, I got a job there 2 days a week being a delivery driver. They gave me, I'd never been to Boston before, ever in my life.
Why did you move to Boston?
I don't know.
Just picked a spot?
My brother was graduating from Berklee College of Music. I was going to his graduation. I didn't know I knew where I didn't want to live.
Wisconsin?
I didn't want to live in Wisconsin, and I didn't want to move back to Olympia where I went to college. So I was like, I don't know.
Boston?
My brother his roommate moved out. He had 3 months. So I was like, I'll just stay here and see. And then I ended up staying for like 6 years, but whatever.
Oh, that's not short.
Yeah. But it's because, I got a job in this wine store and then I was temping and trying to get like a full-time job. And I finally got a full-time job at a university, my first full-time job in my life. Also my only full-time job in my life.
What university?
Tufts University.
Ah,
wonderful.
The Jumbos.
I was at the dental school initially. And so, yeah, I got a job. And by the end of the very first week, I was like, I made a huge mistake. Like, I'm not a job person. Like in high school, I used to throw hardcore shows. Like I used to sell tickets, and do 300 person like music events. I didn't even like hardcore music, but like my friends were in hardcore bands. They had nowhere to play. So I would rent out the basement of a bowling alley, charge everybody $3 and I could make $1,000. Back in 96, that was like $1 million today.
And you, I mean, to think about it, like that core skill of being able to find a space and make something of it is kind of one of your talents in general.
Yeah. I started doing it professionally when I was 16 years old.
That's crazy. And how often would you do those shows?
I did 3 of them. I didn't do them that often, but they were a lot of work. Hindsight, I probably should have done a lot more.
Did you was it, I know it made a lot of money, but was it something that you were like, oh, I really enjoy this?
Yeah, I loved it. Like the first one I did was a total train wreck. Like everything that went wrong. The police shut it down. It didn't even happen. And I had to refund everybody.
And you were like, I gotta do this again.
I fucking loved it. I was hooked. I was addicted. I was like, this is my favorite thing in the world. And then I went to college and I don't know, I somehow got convinced to like, that I should like have a job or something.
Did you do any events in college?
Not officially. I went to a small college in the middle of nowhere. And
hard to do.
They were all socialists. And so like, nobody charged money for parties. You had to like give it away. I'm not even lying.
I believe you. That was not my experience.
my core like capitalism instincts, which is like, hey, let's like charge some money. Cause like my entire plan wasn't to be like, how do I make money? My whole plan was like, how do I use entrepreneurship to do the things in my life that I want? And how do I bring my friends along for the ride?
When does that, is that something that you actually said to yourself?
Yeah, I wrote it down actually. And I have the journal. I looked at it the other day. So basically I was working at the wine store and I saw all these people in Boston.
Yeah.
I eventually stopped being a delivery driver. They didn't even have a map of Boston. Like half the pages were ripped out. And I'm like, I've never been to the city before. They're like, you'll figure it out. No, you won't.
And at that time, the big dig's still going on. So you got.
And there's no cell phones.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you have cell phones, but there's no GPS.
Oh, no. Yeah.
So anyways, I digress. So I was working in the wine store. I was finally behind the register.
And you had the full-time job. You said you made a mistake. Did you get fired from that job?
No, they were really kind and nice. And like, they didn't do anything wrong. And it was a good job. I just realized that like, I shouldn't have a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And, so I was working the tough job and I was working in the wine store and I was trying to figure out how to get out of this. And like, I was like, I know I have to start a business, like that's what I have to do. I don't know what,
yeah,
but I have to start something. So I started looking for things and working at the wine store at night. All these young people my age were coming into the store and they had all these questions about wine. I was trying to learn about wine just for fun at the time. And I realized that there wasn't any good resources out there. So I was like, I'm going to start it.
Yeah.
And I had a background in like print because like I was like the newspaper editor at the college and I liked making print things. I was like, I'm gonna start a print magazine, which
in the early 2000s, perfect timing. Perfect timing.
Look, I ran it for like a year. It made negative $5,000.
Yeah, that tracks.
But I got to meet a lot of people because of it.
Okay.
And ultimately, like I met my, business partner and life partner, Morgan, and it almost immediately when I came up with the first issue, and she was like, you know what you should do? Launch parties. It's like, okay.
So what was the magazine?
It was called The Second Glass.
And what did you write about? Like
wine.
What's the lens that you're...
We rated sparkling wine based on how far we could shoot the cork. But we did and then next to that, we had like an in-depth article all about the Australian wine vintage that year and how the fires were affecting it. So it was like this like push-pull, of like, we wanted to have fun. It is literally what's in my book now. It's like a straight line from that to this, but like really, really, there's a lot of bumps and hiccups in the way,
Sure.
But I met Morgan and she was like, you know what you should do? Just throw a launch party for these. So I was like, okay. So I've been struggling to get anyone to even just like take my free publication. Like people wouldn't even take it out of my hand. I'm like, it's free. They're like, I don't want it. I'm like, oh. And then I was like, hey, I called up 4 of the wine wholesalers I was like working with. Like I reviewed their wines and I knew them. I was like, hey, I'm going to do a wine launch party. You guys should come. And they're like, do you want some free wine? I was like, yeah. And 3 phone calls in 10 minutes. Yeah. 3 phone calls, 10 minutes. I got 5 cases of wine. I was like, I don't need a free publication. This is what we're doing. And we started doing events with 30 people and those turned into
charging
events.
for that.
Some yes, some no. Yeah, we started charging for them. Very small amount. I wasn't really making any real money. They were like $10 a person. And then we were doing we did a couple 300-person events that I didn't really get paid for, but my email list was like building and building and building.
This is all in Boston.
And then I was like, I need to make some money because like I couldn't pay my electricity bill. Like I was getting flown around the world though. So like because of this magazine, like I was all the winery press agencies were reaching out to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the American judge at a wine competition in Portugal and I was on national TV. I had $36 in my bank account at this time.
God, yeah.
I flew to France once with so little money that I couldn't get home, but it was all expenses paid. I would like eat at Michelin star restaurants in Bordeaux during harvest. And so like, I was like, I need to make money to pay for my life in some capacity. And we came up with this idea to do a wine festival, like a big one. We called it Wine Riot. And we threw the very first one in 2009, spring 2009. And we sold 2,500 tickets, made real money.
What was it?
It was so basically like in 2009, wine events were terrible.
Okay.
They were really boring. And we're like, well, we can just make this more fun.
Yeah.
But we're not going to dumb it down. We're going to elevate the education. but we're gonna have like a DJ instead of a jazz band. We're gonna dim the lights after the first 2 hours so people can like have fun. And like, we're just gonna make it, we're gonna focus on the fact that people aren't coming on a Friday night to go to a college level class about wine. They're coming to have fun, but they want to come away with information. And they think, and we thought we could make learning fun, and we did. And
did they know when people were coming to that event, do they know what to expect? That there's going to be a fun.
Oh, the first one, I don't think anybody knew what to expect.
Okay.
I didn't know what to expect, you know, and it was awesome. Like, it was really, really special. This was like before band Passion Pit came out. Like, their drummer was our DJ. Like, it was like, there was like a Twitter live event. This is like 2009, right?
Right.
So anyways, it was really cool. The second one we did flopped hard.
Why do you think that is?
Because I didn't spend a single dollar in advertising.
That'll do it.
You learn lessons as you go, right?
That's a good. How much did you spend for the first one?
$0, but we got all this press because it was the first one.
Oh yeah, sure, okay,
right.
Yeah,
and that was back when the daily emails were really big, and we got in daily candy, and it sold like it sold like half our tickets.
Oh my God, I remember, yeah, doing that. I used to promote shows in New York that I was in using the Daily Candy or NUG or whatever. Like, totally. Yeah.
But the second one we did a federal courthouse, which is wild because like all of your security are U.S. Marshals. And then the third one we actually like started paying for marketing, and we sold that one out with 3,000 people. And then we sold the next one out. And then I think normal people would have been like, oh, cool, I'm doing well in Boston. Let's add like New York. But Morgan and I are crazy. So we're like, no. We're going to add a national tour. So we went from just 2 events a year in Boston to we added New York, DC, Chicago, and LA.
Are you still working at the wine store, by the way?
No.
Okay.
No, I had actually recently just quit.
Okay.
I was only 2 days a week though. Like,
right.
It wasn't like I was ever full time.
Right.
Like, I would get my paychecks, I think were $156 a week or something.
But by throwing,
I would spend it all in the store.
Right, of course. But by throwing 2 events, before you expand, you're throwing 2 events a year. Are you making enough money to like live?
Sure.
Live is a loose term, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like, you know, like I got a hole in my jacket. I was sewing it up. Like,
sure. Yeah.
I wasn't going on vacation or buying things of any substance.
Right.
You know, like a $10 wine was like a splurge, but I got a lot of free stuff. So, you know.
Yeah. So you decided to do a national tour.
Yeah.
What year how far into this is this?
2011.
Okay.
And we built a mobile app where you could like mark and remember all the wines. And it was actually really great. We were collecting massive amounts of data and reviews and all this stuff. And we thought we were like, let's turn this into a tech company, because that's when everybody was turning everything into a tech company. So we moved to LA shortly, and then we moved to San Francisco, and then.
How did the tour end up? Was it a success?
Yeah, the first year was slow, you know, because like you're establishing yourself in a new market, and we still hadn't really figured out how to like advertise.
Yeah.
That was something that was like, we didn't know how to turn that dial up with like cash.
Mm-hmm.
And then in San Francisco, the tech part of it ran out of money. And so we were like, crap.
Of all places.
Yeah, right. And so we were basically just like, let's focus on the events. And we made a video of Morgan and I just being super genuine, being like, because we were like coming up against, like, we were running out of money. We were like, you know, like cash was really, really, really low.
Yeah.
And we had this big New York event coming up, and we're like, we need to sell this thing now. We just need to sell a lot of tickets. Otherwise we're really, really, really fucked. And this is 2012 or 2013, I think 2012. And so, we made this video that was just really genuine. That was like, hi, I'm Morgan. I'm Tyler. This is why we made this event, and this is what it is. You can come, you can taste 250 wines from every region of the world. We want you to learn. We have this app that you can memorize stuff. We're the owners. Like, we'll be there, you know? And we had, I was paying somebody to do marketing. She left. And I was like, I've heard about these like Facebook ad things. So I just took her salary and I put it into Facebook ads.
Mm-hmm.
And overnight, our ticket sales went up like 5x.
Oh my God.
And like plugged that video into the ads. And it was like, it was like nuts. And I rode that wave until 2016 when the whole thing kind of fell apart. And so like, we were running Facebook ads. I knew it was kind of dangerous to put all your money in one spot, but like it was working so well.
Yeah.
And so then, we were doing 25,000 tickets a year. We were running these events, but more
now it's real money.
That's real money.
Yeah.
It wasn't, but the problem was that there's a ceiling on it. Like there wasn't any growth. We couldn't figure out how to bring it to new markets because we had already saturated the markets large enough to sustain such an event. Going to smaller markets didn't make any money,
Yeah.
So like we had no buffer. Like we knew we had to get out of this business model or at least add to it or change it in some way, shape, or form. And I stupidly decided to open a wine store. I thought that was going to work. That was like the biggest error to date that I made as an entrepreneur. And it wasn't that it was a bad store. We opened this beautiful, amazing wine store.
Whereabouts?
In Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Moved back to Boston. And we wanted to reinvent and change the way that wine retail worked. And we did.
What does that mean? Like when you think about what is the concept that?
Yeah. So right now you just walk into a store and it's just like a good
It's overwhelming.
Bottles. And now you go to the natural wine stores and they actually look kind of cool. But like then, like back in 2015, they didn't.
Yeah.
And so what we did is like, so in my book, there's like all these illustrations, all these maps. We actually made those in 2015 and we covered the walls and the maps and we custom made all of these. So basically it was like the entire store was a giant infographic. And then on the infographic were the bottles. And it kind of pointed like, this is left bank Bordeaux. This is right bank Bordeaux. This is everything. And so the store would navigate you, but also get you excited.
Well, that's cool.
And it was a really good idea. And the only issue and the mistake that I made as an entrepreneur is I created a business that I didn't want to run.
No, that is a big problem. Yeah.
I went from flying 150,000 miles a year. I was on the road 8 months a year, flying, traveling, doing all this stuff. So like, I think in 4 months, I didn't leave a 1/4 mile radius between my apartment, the store, and my office.
That sounds like a nightmare.
And you're just stuck in this box. And there's a lot of people that are really happy doing that.
Sure. Totally.
I learned the very hard way that I am not one of those people.
Yeah. Yeah. So was the store, like, did it make money? Was it profitable or?
We were only open for 8 months before, without getting into too much, 2016, the Trump election, Facebook, social media. I never got any answers. I have theories that I won't go into because they sound like a conspiracy theorist. But all of a sudden, our Facebook ads stopped performing completely. We saw 80% reduction in clicks, even though we were spending the same amount.
Wow.
We saw an 80% reduction in clicks, everything. Our New York event was coming up and we were just like, we weren't selling the tickets and we didn't have,
So you're still doing Wine Riot while you have the wine store.
Yeah. The idea was that we'd keep doing the store and we do the events because then people could come to the events, mark the wines they like, go to the store and buy them, or have them delivered to their house.
Yeah.
It seems simple, right?
Yeah.
And then the events, I knew, I'd been saying this, I knew we had to bet our entire company on every single event because you're running these events that are like, they cost $800,000 to run an event, and your profit margins around like 12%. So like you sell only 60% of the tickets and like you're in the whole like $100+ grand.
Yeah.
Like when the events make money, they actually can make a lot of money. And when they lose money, they hemorrhage cash. And there's no possible way to keep that kind of cash on hand. Whatever. So I fire sold the company in like 5 days. And then
And you still had the wine store though?
Yeah. So we had the wine store, fire sold the company, at least a large percentage of it. And then like 6 months later, they fired us. And so we kind of got rid of the wine store, moved to New York, tail between our legs,
I mean, moving to New York is such in that experience seems like a very, very bold move given New York. You know what I mean? Like, and you're not from New York and
no.
My
partner's, Morgan's from LA.
Okay. So neither of you lived here before?
No. Well, look, we'd crossed off a lot of cities.
Sure.
There weren't that many more places to go.
Yeah.
Right? We're
Yeah.
like, all right, well, we're done with Boston.
You done LA and San Francisco.
Like, I love living in LA, but there's no work for us. Like, I lived there for 4 years, and like, I didn't have not a single in-person meeting in LA. I would just fly to New York for them all. So I was like, well, it's lovely being here.
Right.
I really didn't like living in San Francisco. Even I love visiting. I just didn't like living there. And so then, this was like when, Museum of Ice Cream was just like happening. And Morgan took me to 3 Museum of Ice Creams in 1 week. The 3? 2.
Around the country? Because there's one in New York.
We did Miami and LA.
Okay.
And we're event professionals. We've been working and doing events forever. Like we can make show me an event, I'll make a P&L in 20 minutes.
Right.
And so we went around and we looked at it and we like made a P&L, and we're like, and we'd been talking about changing the format of what we do for years. And we were looking for a new model, and we were looking for a new format. And our existing model was we travel around the country. But the problem with our model, with the festival model, is that like we rented out the 69th Armory and 25th in Lexington, right? It's a military armory. They did the Victoria's Secret fashion show there forever.
Yeah. Victoria's
Secret had I think 6 weeks to load in. We got there at 8 a.m. and the show started at 7 p.m. Like we couldn't really set it up, and we could only do so much. We could only build an experience that was as good as we could pack onto a truck and set up and tear down. Right.
This is for Wine Riot.
Yeah. And so we saw, Museum of Ice Cream, and we were like, we'd already been talking about this model, but then actually seeing it, we're like, what if we just got a space and then stayed there?
Mm-hmm.
And then we took all of that education, and we took everything we were doing at Wine Riot, all that experience, everything we knew how to do, and all we were doing is change the business model. And our whole idea wasn't like, oh, I want to make more money. It was like, everybody wants to make more money, but like with the festival model, we couldn't spend that much because we could only make so much because we were only there for 2 days.
Right.
If we could be there longer and we could get more people through the space, we could spend more on the build out and we could do cooler shit.
Yeah.
And so, we had $0. We were broke. We borrowed $75,000 from a family member. I don't even know how we convinced this like landlord to give us a space. We got an old, like a retail space on Fifth Ave that was going out of business. 15,000 square feet on Fifth Ave. Here's the keys.
Pretty good.
Right? We gave them the 75 grand, got the keys. We convinced our vendors. We were very open and honest with all the vendors. We're like, look, I don't know if this is going to work. But if it does, I'll give you whatever I owe you, I'll add 10% on top of it if you give me 90-day terms. And a lot of people are like, yeah, I'll take that bet.
And just so people know, we're talking about what became Rose Mansion.
This was Rose Mansion.
The first version of Rose Mansion.
Yeah. So, this was Rose Mansion. And so Morgan came up with the concept. I came up with the name. That's how we split it up. And I came up with the name, and I just was talking to random people. I'd go to a bar and just talk to a random person and be like, I'm thinking about doing this thing called Rose Mansion. And every woman I ever talked to was like, I don't even care what that is. I want to go there. Rose was peaking. Pop-ups were peaking at that point. And so we're like, all right.
And for those who don't know what the Museum of Ice Cream was, should we open the white or should we?
Oh yeah, so this white wine.
Yeah,
from Wisconsin.
Yeah, I'm excited about this white wine from Wisconsin.
We'll see. We'll see if you're excited.
It's 5 years old, so that's
it was really good when I tasted it back in 2020.
Okay. Well, I'm excited.
And
what is it? Yeah.
It's a Civil Blanc, which is this grape that is a hybrid. So all the wines that we drink are this genus species called Venus vinifera, and they come from Vitis vinifera, and they come from around the Mediterranean.
Mm-hmm.
These are North American grapes that aren't.
Oh, he's bringing us new glasses.
Really good for wine at all. They make really bad wine. But what they do is they cross them.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. They cross them with the European grapes, and you actually get and you get a pretty good wine.
Cool.
But they can survive the harsh winters,
which Wisconsin has many of. So while you're doing that, just so people know, the Museum of Ice Cream is a pop-up museum or event space that's basically Instagrammable, kind of, I would say, diorama, like physical dioramas that you can, go into like a bathtub full of sprinkles or
Yeah.
I forget what the other ones are, but like they're just like little things, and you take pictures, and at the end you might get a little ice cream, and you feel pretty good.
Yeah.
There are a few other things like that, like Color Factory here in New York is
Yep.
like that. So you guys were creating that, but for rosé,
Well, yeah. So
and there's an
basically,
education part of it too.
yeah. So where we were coming from was like,
First sip.
cheers. That's homeland.
All right.
I love regional wine. So I don't know. I feel like the jaded would say that we copied them, but we really just were interested in we were interested in taking advantage of real estate opportunities at the time. And we were very interested in like adjusting the business model for the thing that we've been doing
Right.
for so long.
And it didn't have to be like you're throwing an event and that one day or what it mattered. It's a accumulation of people coming in and seeing this.
Yeah, instead of us going to people, why don't the people come to us?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, we can spend a lot more on the build out, which means we can make way cooler shit. And this was like the rise of Instagram, right? Like we were throwing our festivals and people were coming to the festival, taking a photo. And I look at the photo afterwards, people were like, oh my God, that looks so cool. Where were you? Oh, this thing that you can't go to because they already left town. And they won't be back for 6 months and you'll forget about.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But one of the things I liked about Rosé Mansion, and I didn't go to the first one, I went to the second one,
Okay.
but I went many times to the second one.
You did. You made up for it.
I did. I really did. Was that you did, tying it back to an earlier part of the conversation, you made it educational and fun, obviously, but you did went back to like Egyptian wine.
Yeah.
And I thought that, I thought that aspect of it didn't seem to your point about what wine right even didn't seem pretentious or hard or, challenging. It seemed like, oh, I'm sipping this rosé and you're giving me context that I didn't have before. Now I walk out of here and I learned something.
And that's the entire idea, right? And that's the idea of my book,
right?
Is like context, and it's about culture, And so we really try to do that with, both the Rosé Mansions, which was like rosé is a lifestyle, and we actually have a ton of information if you want. But if you don't and you just want to hang out, we got that too.
Yeah.
And so, we rented the space, we put the whole thing together. We had no idea if anyone was going to show up.
And for people, like what would be, as you think about the original one, like what were some of the, I don't, what's the best way of describing it? Like the areas or whatever.
Yeah, there were rooms. So you bought a ticket and you got to run through, I think, 14 different rooms. And each room had most of the rooms had like wine in it. So you got 8 wines. You got 2 glasses of wine. And we described it as like IKEA, where you can only go one way.
Yeah.
And, like the first room was like this explosion sticker room where we painted everything stark white, everything, floor, furniture, everything. And you got these stickers and they were little red grapes. And you got to take an entire sticker sheet and put them anywhere you wanted in the room. And what we were really trying to get the point across, it was fun to do. People like doing a tactile thing. And it was before you got any wine. But it explained to people that like rosé is made from red wine grapes and it's the skins that give wine its color. And so as this room, the longer we're open, the darker red this room will get. And it'll go from white wine to red wine with rosé in between, right?
Yeah.
But it's a fun thing to do. We had a scratch and sniff wall with it was like different aromas. We had a blend your own wine station, which was hilarious. I think it was like Vine Pair. The girl that came was like, this is like absolutely disgusting. And it's like, I can't believe they just pour different wines from different bottles. And then BB Gretz, who's like a super famous Tuscan winemaker, came and he was like, that's exactly what I do. And all the winemakers like came, they were like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I do.
That's so
I was like, I know, because I modeled this after I blended wine with winemakers. This is what they do. I mimicked that.
Yeah. And when a lot of wineries, especially in California, will offer a wine blending session for a lot of money.
Right.
But you get to do it as part of this overall experience, which is so fun.
And you take completed wines and you blend them together.
Right. Yeah. That's what they do.
That's all we did. We just bought a bunch of different kinds of wines, but we made like a deli so you could like mark on a sheet whether you wanted dry or sweet or off dry or like what kind of fruitiness.
Yeah.
And it was like you're ordering a sandwich at a bodega.
Yeah.
And you give it to them and then we'd custom make you your own glass.
How fun. That's so fun.
But yeah, it was wild. Like we went from like I was broke, I had no money. And the night before we opened, like, I mean, I was pouring epoxy flooring until 5 o'clock in the morning. Right. And at 10 o'clock in the morning, like 5 hours later, I was on Good Morning America. Like,
Holy shit.
it was bonkers.
So you had PR, obviously.
Yeah, we had PR, but it also just like absolutely went viral. Like, it was nuts. I was on Good Morning America, like CNN, the New York Times wrote a hate piece about it, which was like, it was beautiful. It was like amazing.
What was their take? What did they hate about it?
Having fun is meaningless. But it's like Amanda Hess, and it's an opinion piece, and I feel like they do a lot of these, like, kind of like they bathe. They're like, basically, they'd said all these pop-ups were like meaningless. But that's kind of the idea. And you know, I think,
like, why can't we have fun in life? Like what's wrong with that?
Look, that article, that hate piece where we were featured, like there was like 4 photos of Rose Mansion, sold more tickets than any of the positive pieces we had.
No, I'm sure.
And when it happened, I was like, man, I've been written up in like every major publication in the country. You know, like I've been in the LA Times, I've been in the Boston Globe, all that stuff. I'd never been in the New York Times. And I was like, I need a New York Times article. I want a New York Times article. And when they wrote like a hate piece about us, I was like, this is better than a positive one. If you're doing something that the New York Times hates, and they took the time to write about it, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah, no,
I loved it.
That's a great pull quote, by the way.
Yeah, my PR company called me and they're like, are you okay? I'm like, am I okay? I'm fucking great.
So how long does the pop-up last? Because I assume you had meant it to be a pop-up, not to be permanent.
We meant that one to be a pop-up. It lasted, we opened July 15th and we closed on Halloween.
2017?
2018.
18, okay.
So
18.
we were open, I think, with 16, 17 weeks.
Okay.
And
that was on purpose.
yeah, and a lot of people came to ask us and they were like, well, if I gave you money, could you keep this open? And I was like, no. They're like, why not? I'm like, it is literally falling apart. We built this to last for 16 weeks. Like, we had to be closed 1 day a week just to fix shit.
Yeah.
We were doing 1,000 people a day. We sold 80,000 tickets. It was 98% women dressed up in heels. Like, how do you poke a hole in the wall like 8 inches, 10 inches up? You know, oh, well, because he posed with heels and you stick the heel through the wall.
Sure you do.
The second week, somebody ripped the sink out of the bathroom. Like, I don't even know.
I mean, look, as someone who's owned a variety of bars, I've placed a lot of sinks.
Destruction.
Don't know why that happens.
Mass destruction.
Yeah.
So we had to close that one. And then we opened the second one. So we made a bunch of money on that, actually. And we just YOLO'd it into the second year because
that's what you do. That's what you do.
And then we built a bigger one. So we were like, you know what? If 15,000 square feet is good, 32,000 square feet is better.
Right, of course.
And we signed this astronomically large lease.
In the middle of like Midtown-ish Manhattan.
Yeah.
Like Herald Square-ish Manhattan. The Manhattan Mall? Right?
Manhattan Mall.
Yeah.
My CFO, who's like a really good friend of mine, he sent me a text message with like a screenshot of like, he was like, this was like 3 months later. He's like, you signed the 4th largest commercial real estate lease in Manhattan in that year, apparently. I was like, what? We had like no investors.
Right.
I was running this thing on an Amex card. Like, we didn't have any money. So anyways, yeah, so we opened the second one, bigger, better, right?
What was the difference other than size between the first and second when you think about?
We reconcepted all the rooms.
Yeah.
So we didn't repeat anything except the bathtubs. So you could sit in these bathtubs and throw rose petals, and it like looked really, it was fun. And we built everything else. We brought in a wine tank from a winery in Oregon. It was broken and I rigged it for a keg to go through so you could drink wine out of the wine tank.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We built a giant disco ball pit. It was fun. It was a really, really, really fun space. And we took everything we learned from the first one. And that was the nice thing about doing pop-ups is that like you can tear it all down and rebuild it in a way that like, you know, fixes.
I'm having a second glass of this just to, you know, that's a, you know, I enjoyed it.
Aged regional wines, like this is cool stuff.
Yeah. So pandemic happens. Very sad.
Yeah.
Because in-person businesses weren't doing a thing.
Yeah, we raised like a bunch of money from a top tier VC firm. We built this brand new art show. That's how we fixed the bar problem. We're like, we don't need a 10,000 square foot bar. We need like a 3,000 square foot bar.
Mm-hmm.
So we built an 8,000 square foot art show. And we raised this money with this venture firm. We got the money in January of 2020. And then, so, I thought I was being all smart, taking advantage of these real estate deals. Because basically, like, what we were doing with real estate, it was we were going to properties that had a lot of value.
Yeah.
And in New York City, it takes a flagship corporation, it takes a corporation, to sign a flagship lease. It takes about a year to negotiate. So I was going to properties saying, hey, if you don't have anything, we'll be in and out by the time you even sign it. And
For the pop-up.
yeah, for the pop-ups. And and so we were just finding property that was going to get turned into something at some point. And so they couldn't sign a 10-year lease.
Yeah.
And then I would offer them a lot less than it was worth, but they would get something instead of nothing. Super smart.
Everybody wins.
Yeah, until there's a pandemic and your lease is over in the middle of it.
I'm sure that's an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
But you guys decided, okay, as you do, the next thing, and that's when the book kind of became
I got
the
the book deal, and I was only supposed to write the book while there was a pandemic. And what was supposed to be 9 months turned into 3 years, but the book turned out 10 times better than I ever thought.
From what I've seen of it, and I've seen the illustrations, we've been talking about this for a long time. It looks amazing. I can't wait to get a copy of that book and read it and immerse myself in it because it looks so fun.
And it's dense. I wrote what they ended up printing. I signed a contract for 60,000 words and I submitted 120,000. And so, but my editor kept everything. And so it's made by 2 ADHD kids in a pandemic. You don't have to read it front to back. You can just kind of flip through it. I made it so you don't have to read it any certain way.
Yeah.
You can just kind of browse. You can just read the headlines, or you can dig into it. Everything's digestible. But it's dense. There's hardcore science in there. There's I think more in depth than a lot of existing wine books.
Yeah.
But still keep it really light and fun.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, so the book, I'm guessing, is taking up a lot of your time.
Right
but
now.
anything else after that? Anything next steps?
I mean,
next things? New Rosé Mansion? Anything else?
That's the idea, right? We always wanted to bring it back. We always wanted to do it. And it's really just look, I've been doing this, different names, different brands, same story, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're trying to get some new space now. I'm talking to landlords. We're looking for new spaces. Basically, what we we're not going to rebuild the same Rosé Mansion as before. A lot's changed. Things have changed. People want more intimate spaces. People want all kinds of different things. We have a Rosé Mansion concept that's a little bit smaller. That's just as fun.
Mm-hmm.
We have a immersive dining concept that we're calling Champagne Wishes.
Fun.
We almost opened one and then we lost the lease. We're trying to get and then I want to do a Rebel School of Wine pop-up that mimics the education of the book. But so many people do these wine schools where you sit down. I'm it's a Friday night, right?
Right.
So the idea is that you move through different rooms and we can do anything from fun courses on Saturdays to Rosé and Slay to in-depth history of Italy, you know, and everything in between. And so you get up, you move around, maybe you blend some wine, maybe you make your own cheese plate based on what you want, and you learn all about it. So it's kind of we're looking at building a wine activity center.
It's so fun. Yeah.
We're really, we've always been inspired by children's museums and how you get to hands-on, tactile. And I really think that post-pandemic, everybody's really looking for human interaction. And we're really trying to figure out how to maximize, whether you go with somebody, how do you get to spend good quality time with them? Or how do you, if you want to meet somebody new, how do you get good quality time with them? Enjoy and play and fun, but also learning.
Yes.
Wine is a really, really good vehicle for storytelling,
And there are so many stories left for people to hear. This has been great, man. Thank you for doing this.
Totally.
Cheers. Thank you for sharing your wine, too.
Yeah, Wisconsin.
Perfect. Wisconsin whites. Who knew?
That's it for this episode of Story in a Bottle. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review for us in the iTunes store or wherever you listen. I'd like to thank our producers at 1459 Production Management and Charming Robots Eric Bowie for his continued production support.
And of course, I'd like to thank my guest, Tyler Balliet, for graciously giving us his time.